Hello all of you wonderful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and yes, you have read the title, I am indeed here to have a good old moan about DLCs. You cannot stop me, I am inevitable. However, DLCs don't always stand for dastardly laundering conspiracy, as add-ons and expansion pack style downloads have provided some absolute bangers across the years. I mean, one need only look at Undead Nightmare or Far Cry 3's Blood Dragon as good examples of this. These are times where the player base was rewarded with fresh experiences, of times which saw developers cut loose and have some pure fun, and of course, it was all bundled at a price that wasn't offensive to the fans. But these 10 games, well, they were the inverse of that. These were wallet gouging, idiotically priced, and sometimes just a plain big middle finger to those that supported the title. And today, well, we're going to put them to task. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game DLCs that burned their fan base. Number 10, Horse Armor, The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. I couldn't really start anywhere else, could I? Plus I also wanted to get it out of the way early doors, as there are much more juicier things to talk about. Now, this was probably one of the earliest examples of DLC burning its fanbase, because the horse armor, which, lest we not forget, did nothing other than make your horse look like a parade float, was priced at a princely $2.50. Now, I know what you're thinking, that in the current gaming climate, $2.50 for a cosmetic item doesn't seem like that much at all. In fact, players are known to spend hundreds on such things, but you know what? Back in 2006, this felt like a massive insult. Also adding to this was the fact that this was a purely single player, purely offline game, meaning that you were only really showing off your new duds to yourself. And if you needed any more convincing of the fact, then Bethesda even acknowledged how silly they were with this on April Fool's Day 3 years after this game was released, where they put everything on sale except the horse armor, which doubled in price. Number 9, Battle of Forlì and Bonfire of the Vanities, Assassin's Creed 2. For many gamers, Assassin's Creed 2's extra story chapters were their first experience of content being cut out of a finished product and sold back to them under the guise of an expansion. One such moment, however, stuck out more than the rest. Now, immediately after Ezio's successful initiation into the Assassin Order, the Animus would encounter a glitch, resulting in one of Desmond's stupid friends declaring that the next 2 memory sequences were indeed corrupted. The game would then invite the player to purchase these sequences as downloadable content upon their release. Again, DLC isn't a bad thing, but by incorporating this into the very game itself as a chance to sell us some good memories, well, that, my friend, was really stinky. Number 8, Ultimate Shortcut Bundle, Battlefield 3. Across many genres, grinding is simply part of gaming, as frustrating as that might be. And yet some games companies have found ways to make it even worse. And by this, I'm specifically addressing the titles that artificially made grinding harder so that it incentivized players to purchase DLC that circumvents this gameplay loop. Battlefield 3 was one such game, which offered its fanbase the option to unlock all of the weapons in the game for use straight away. Not only was this bundle ludicrously expensive, being just shy of a full-priced game, but it also completely removed any progression system that had been put in place. Now, in games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, it was annoying to be killed again and again by akimbo 1887s, but you know what? These were only unlocked at the end of that progression tree, meaning that you did have to work to get these spammable nightmares. But here though, well, come right in, son, pony up the dough and you'll have access to the best guns in the game. Brilliant. What type of message was this sending to the fan base, eh? Number 7, The Taken King, Destiny. Bungie's third expansion for their sci-fi looter-shooter Destiny, The Taken King, above all else displayed the utter contempt that Bungie and Activision had for its own fanbase. For starters, the expansion was almost the same price as the base game, which definitely soured the experience for a lot of players, and while the DLC was admittedly huge and improved the game's story a lot, it also came with one absolutely huge setback. In restructuring the game in such a way, players who hadn't bought the exorbitant exorbitantly priced DLC were locked out of already existing content, such as Nightfall missions and daily and weekly heroic strikes, basically taking content away from those not willing to shell out for a new expansion. This felt criminal to loyal players of the base game, and it was made even worse when it came to light that some of the Taken King's content was only available to players who bought the $80 collector's edition of the expansion, which, lest we not forget, included the base game of the fucking title they already had. Talk about a slap in the face, right? Number 6, additional fighters that were already there. Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Unlocking additional characters has been the bread and butter of fighting games for decades. It used to be one of the reasons that you play the likes of Tekken and Street Fighter or even Smash just to see who was hiding in the code. And unfortunately, Street Fighter Cross Tekken makes this list for precisely that reason, as there were a ton of combatants waiting on the disc, but they were ones that could only be unlocked by paying for them. That's right, Capcom announced that the 12 previously PS Vita exclusive fighters would later be sold as DLC on the console and PC versions of the game, and also admitted that they were already on the disc. The work had been done, no extra budget had needed to be spent on creating or porting the characters, the publishers simply had chosen to make you pay for the privilege of unlocking them. What an insult. Number 5, Easy Fatalities, Mortal Kombat 10. And speaking of fighting games, this next entry was less a slap in the face and more of a kicking of your nuts so hard that they came up your windpipe only to then be slapped back down again. I'm speaking, of course, about Mortal Kombat 10 and its bizarre choice to offer players a chance at purchasing easy fatalities. Now, this DLC allowed you to forego remembering a combo input to get the fatalities to work, which in a fighting game which relies on memory of such combos is utterly bizarre, and instead you'd get the gory finishes going with just a simple button tap or two. However, it gets worse than simply just the idea that the devs are clearly aiming this at unskilled players or potentially younger players who shouldn't be playing the game in the first place, as this wasn't even a DLC that could be used all the time. You were instead purchasing either 5 or 30 easy fatalities, meaning that you'd eventually need to learn the combos anyway when they ran out. The devs even tried to defend this by saying that this was just for the casual player looking to have some fun. However, for 99% of the rest of the fan base, this was more of a case of, get out of here! Number 4, the ending to the actual game, Asura's Wrath. So many moons ago, games such as Golden Axe, Streets of Rage 2 and Earthworm Jim would end early or withhold the game's true ending from players for committing the cardinal sin of playing on easy mode. In 2012, however, Capcom took this in an entirely more reprehensible direction with the anime-inspired action brawler Asura's Wrath, because here they simply withheld the ending for you committing the sin of just buying the game. The 18-episode base game ends with the declaration that the player must go back through the game and obtain 5 S ranks in order to see the true ending. And this ending, well, quite frankly, absolutely sucks because it acts as a cliffhanger which then advertises that DLC is coming to finish things off. How insulting is that? Obviously, players were incensed at having paid and played to get 100% only to be told that they then had to buy more. This wasn't a case of filler story being cut out and bundled back in, this was the game's fucking ending. That is some serious billy, my friend. Number 3, Burial at Sea, BioShock Infinite. Now, as I've said many times before in this channel, the way that BioShock Infinite was handled and its shoehorning of references back to the first and second game is why it kind of sits as my least enjoyed BioShock experience of the 3. It's still great, don't get me wrong, it's just not as coherent or confident as the other 2 titles. However, that all looked to be solved with the DLC Burial at Sea, which would return to the best thing about BioShock, the horribly entrancing City of Rapture. And yet, it seemed to bring with it a few big problems. For one, while it looked to tie in Elizabeth's revelation at the end of Infinite's narrative to this underwater nightmare, this DLC series actually retconned that game's ending, revealing that one version of Elizabeth remained and that she had been chasing down the remaining Bookers to eliminate. Which is odd because in Infinite, it closed the loop with Booker drowning, there shouldn't be any more, and then it just clumsily tried to end with all of these characters dying just as BioShock 1 looked to kick off. It cheapened the story of the first game, which didn't need all of this time travel guff to appear deeper than it was, while at the same time treating the characters that you've grown to love like driftwood and just casting them off. Number 2, stuff packs and much more, The Sims. The Sims, everyone's favourite, utterly decadent Stepford Wives simulator, is without a doubt a global phenomenon, and yet when you actually step back and take a look at this franchise, it's more than a little suspect. Now, the first game was pretty dedicated when it came to expansions, offering up new careers, regions, and gameplay affecting elements. The Sims 2 was similar, with each expansion bringing massive new neighbourhoods, fantasy creatures, and much more. However, the addition of stuff packs, which were essentially more household items that needed to be bought, raised some suspicion. The Sims 3 once again bombarded players with even more expansions and even more stuff packs. And while the game was rich with content, it was beginning to feel bloated and more than a little like a cash grab. Then came The Sims 4. The base game itself had been stripped of content and contained significantly less than its predecessor at launch, and players were expected to buy 16 stuff packs, many of which had been key features of the previous games. Ouch. What has started so well with this series has become an entire franchise built around paid DLC, and it's genuinely worrying what's going to happen further down the line with this in mind. And number 1, Fallout first, Fallout 76. How fitting is it to bookend this list with Bethesda, a company that in recent years has slipped from pioneering lovingly crafted single-player RPGs to botching their launches, betraying their player base, and butchering their own IPs with all the elegance of a man falling down a spiral staircase. Fallout 76 is bad. Really, really atrociously bad. And I do not care what state it is in right now, it is still bad. And if you still want to argue with me, then I tell you what, just write "it works" on a piece of paper over and over again, look at it for an hour, and then mail it to Bethesda's customer service, aka your own bloody bin, because that is how little they cared about your opinion. However, if we're to pick out one example of the many slaps to the face that this game is, it's got to be Fallout first. A paid-for model that allows private servers, unlimited scrap storage, a placeable fast travel point, and much more. This costs a mighty £100 a year, or $99 if you're going to be pedantic about it, and obviously didn't work properly when implemented, because of course it didn't. It was and still is greedy shithousing, and I hate that they have the nerve to try and charge people for this DLC model. In short, here's my opinion on it. Don't bloody buy it. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 video game DLCs that burned their fan base. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below, as well as any other examples that you would have added onto this list, as who knows, I might do a commenter's edition of this further down the line. But before I go, I just want to say one thing, and that is that I hope that you are well. We talked about a lot of fan bases that were burned in today's list, and I just want to reach out to you, the personal fan base of WhatCulture, and make sure that you are doing all right. Whatever your walk of life, whatever it is you are getting up to today, as long as it's not hurting anyone, obviously I should just state that very clearly, I hope that you are well, and I hope that you are achieving those 3 goals of love, happiness, and success, because you deserve them, my friend. And if you're struggling with that, then don't worry. These things do not come easily, and sometimes you need a helping hand. Remember, you have friends, family, and professionals in the support industry, all of which who care about you and want you to do well. They are your fans, and they want you to succeed. Now go out there and smash it, you big ledge. As always, I've been Jules, you have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.